Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the latest edition of the Gersnet Podcast, hosted by myself, Craig Gray, joined here today by Stewart Weir. Stewart, how are you doing on this wonderful Friday?
Well, you're mentioning wonderful Fridays. I can think of a hell of a lot of other things I might be doing on a Friday night, so maybe it's not that wonderful, but I do jest. Always good to be in your company.
No, absolutely, and this is the first time that I've been on with Stewart, so hopefully we're all in for a good night tonight. Just before we go, just a wee bit of promotion of the podcast. Of course, you can get us over at www.gersnet.co.uk, and just a word from one of our sponsors, and that is Zenith Coins, the official Rangers Club coin copy. And it's a good wee coin. Each coin has a unique serial number engraved in the outer rim, and it comes complete with a Rangers presentation box and certificate of authenticity. And you can join Rangers legends and famous Rangers fans like Alan McCoist, Derek Johnson, Marvin Andrews, Tom Stoltman, Gordon Ramsay, just to name a few, to get the official Rangers Club coin. You can also get 10% off your purchase by using the code GN10 as well. So if you want to save a wee bit of money, head over there and save on that club coin. So as I say, it's a big night, a big week ahead, but a big day ahead tomorrow as well. It's the Old Firm derby. So first things first, we need to speak about, obviously, the transfer window and the action on deadline day, or should I say, the lack of action. Stuart, there was no new signs that came in after the Champions League money. Do you think that this squad's good enough to challenge on all four fronts this season?
I was severely chastised yesterday when on Twitter I posted up a tweet about Rangers transfer activity and likened it to Diet Coke, Coke Zero, Tab and something else. Basically, all of the brands that Coca-Cola produce that don't have any sugar in it. And I think the fans were looking for some sugar. If you see what I'm saying, after last season, and the amount of money that Rangers supposedly earned. Now, I know there's other stories will be doing the rounds, and they might become a wee bit more relevant over the coming days in terms of Rangers and financial fair play. If it was a case that was going to be a factor in the transfer window, then I think maybe Rangers were duty bound to actually explain that to the fans, and I think the fans would have been understanding at that. Personally, I think some of the signings, to my mind, have been really good signings. I think Kolach, I think Lawrence have been great additions this far. Tillman looks a real player, and who knows how that might pan out during in the future. One or two other guys have started to make a mark in terms of the squad and in terms of how they're utilised. But I think if you take, say for instance, the midfield and the centre midfielders. Now I know Arfield can maybe drop back and fill a role there, but you're talking about Kamara, Lundstrom, Jack, Davis, and McCann. And I think, personally, that's a bit lightweight to try and see you through an entire season on what is, at this point in time, four fronts, two major ones being the league and the Champions League. But suspensions and the likes, injuries, you name it, you start to then get down to playing the same dozen or 15 guys week in, week out, and that takes its toll as well. It's great having a starting 11 that you can say these guys pick themselves. Ultimately, though, these guys will stop picking themselves if you pick up any injuries or suspensions. And in today's game, it's nigh impossible for you to be a centre midfield player or defensive midfield player in the Scottish Premier League and not eventually pick up a suspension at some point in time, given how yellow cards and even red cards are tossed around.
Mm-hmm. No, I think you make a good few points there. I think in terms of the transfers, I do think the fans were crying out for someone. I said a couple of weeks ago, I thought of a number 8 player, a guy that can get up and defend as well. The only thing is, it's kind of, we're caught in two minds. We have Gio in the press conference saying that he's happy with the squad, he likes the players that he's got, he doesn't feel that we need to bring in anyone else. But then obviously you've got the whole, well, is he saying that? Is he being honest? The thing is, we don't know. We can obviously only take him at his word. And that's something as well, that I think maybe as you said earlier, if the board maybe came out and said, we can't spend money for this reason or that reason or other, as you say, I think the fans would have understood. And I think that's something as well, the sort of communication, possibly being in touch or out of touch with the supporters. I mean, this board in the whole have done a great job. I think they'll need to appreciate that since they came in 2015. The regime changed, obviously. Up to the current board we've got, we're making, record revenue in terms of commercial, record money in terms of player sales. And now, we've basically had 2 Champions League pots ago, because if you look at last year, the Europa League run was essentially Champions League level money, and now we've obviously got this year with the Champions League level money. So, I think it is disappointing that we never got the player that I thought we were crying out for at least. I was thinking maybe even just one player, just to sort of lift the mood a wee bit, like even a loan or a free transfer or something like that, because it would have given the place a mood rise. I mean, if you look at sort of when Ramsey came in, and this is possibly the worst actually example to use, but considering what happened at Celtic Park a couple of days after, but it gave everyone a real boost around the club, and everyone seemed to be enjoying it. I mean,
the Bartley story. I mean, that was a non-starter from day one, and given some of the signings that Rangers have made, supposedly, marquee, although it's more like a sort of tent you might buy out of Argos rather than a marquee. But some of the big names like Joey Barton, Cranchar, Senderos. I mean, some of these guys have come in with a reputation and a big name in what they've done previously, and completely and utterly bombed. And I would have to say the Ramsey scenario was one, and given the fact that Bartley has been indifferent at best at Chelsea, that was one that kind of filled me ever so slightly with like fear and trepidation that he might suddenly rock up. But just to look at the striker position. You've got Kolak, you've got Morelos, and you've got Roof. That's 3 guys that could play that position. Out of that, who knows where Roof is at? Who knows where Morelos is at, to be perfectly honest. So you've got one guy who's, fortunate enough for Rangers scoring goals just now. That's not the kind of depth that you require in that position, I would say, especially given how volatile Morelos is temperamental-wise, and also Roof is maybe injury-wise. I think you need more cover, and it's fine saying, you can play with a false 9 or you can push somebody else into that role. Can you really? I think we've seen, likes of Wright and Sakala being utilised as a striker at times, and it just hasn't worked. So I'd have thought that position, centre midfield, they were looking for not mega buys by any means, but people that would actually have had you sitting up taking notice that it was another new face that was arriving. In centre midfield, attacking midfield, Tillman has done really well. Lawrence has made a great start as well. Arfield, given his age, and he's been utilised as almost like a kind of bit part player at times, but he's always delivered. Hadji, Lowry, those guys, we need to wait and see what the next couple of weeks and months are going to bring for these guys. So again, there are the sort of forward spine of the team, I think, is just a wee bit light.
Mm-hmm. No, I can certainly see where you're coming from. I mean, in terms of the strikers and sort of updates, I think Gio said earlier that Roof was sort of back in light training and said he was not far away. But again, like you said, the issue with Roof is, what does not far away mean? Like, we don't know. Morelos, obviously those issues have came back up, although conversely you would maybe say that they weren't there for a couple of years. So maybe now he needs to sort of crack on now, certainly for the next
does, but I think he knows that, and if Gio's doing his job, he'll have impressed that on him as well.
Mm-hmm. No, I do completely agree with you on that one. In terms of moving forward, then obviously we had the game against Queen of the South midweek. Wasn't an inspired performance by any means, but was kind of job done through the next round. And in terms of performances, though, and this is sort of cutting in as well into the transfers, thought a lot of the young players done well, more so your McCanns and Kings. Do you think that perhaps the reason that Gio didn't look to go further into the transfer market is because he's looking at your Kings and your McCanns and your Lowries and thinking, well, they're going to be my sort of squad players or backup going forward?
I think they have to look that way. And again, historically Rangers have done well bringing through the some of their own. I think on midweek against Queen of the South, it was job done. Took them a wee while, maybe losing the goal, losing an equaliser, kind of stymied things a wee bit, but ultimately they came good. The only question I would have said about that team or the selection of that team was that the selection in goal. I thought McCrory might have been worthy of a start, given it's a fact that the game's at Ibrox in front of a television audience as well. I thought maybe he'd have been worthy of a start. You know what McGregor can do. And that'd be the only kind of change I would really contemplate or make.
Mm-hmm. No, I think with McCrory, to be honest, I just don't think that Gio fancies him. I mean, it seems like a few. Well, Gerrard, obviously. Listen, when you've got Alan McGregor there in the form that he's in, McCrory's never going to get a look in, is he? And he did reasonably well when he went out and loaned to the likes of Livingston and whatnot. But I just think now, obviously, this was probably going to be his big opportunity. And I just think the manager doesn't fancy him. I think in terms of the goalkeeper, I think we're okay right now for goalkeepers. I think it's at a point where we're fine. It's not a disaster, but it's not amazing. And I think next summer we'll probably look to invest. I mean, in terms of, obviously, we touched earlier about the board and stuff like that. There's been a few issues this week. Obviously, the ticket prices were released for the Champions League games, which I thought were far too expensive. And I think after that, a lot of the supporters were expecting, big names coming forward. And, I was just thinking about looking at it in terms of that, because on deadline day yesterday, we had, whilst Rangers weren't doing anything in terms of players coming in, we were having money being taken out of bank accounts for the most amount of money that you could have been charged for per UEFA rules for the Champions League group stage games. And I think there's maybe been a few times that the board have maybe, just kind of read the room on a few things. I mean, we had obviously the Australia friendly debacle last year where they actually came out and explained why they were doing it. And that's kind of like yourself, which, like you were saying earlier, it's like, if we're not going to make any more signings, if there is a reason behind that's a financial reason, that's fine. Just come out and say it. Do you think that aspect of the communication could be better, Stuart?
I think it could be. There's a bit of me that says that Rangers have strived to get to the Champions League, and if you thought that Rangers or the board at Ibrox were going to ask for anything other than top dollar for these tickets, given the importance of this and given the fact that you strive to reach the Champions League to earn 40 million quid, they were going to cash in this. Those figures are set by UEFA, and Rangers have basically said, right, that's what UEFA says, we'll just go with it. And there's a bit of me that agrees with people that says they're a bit steep. There's another bit of me sort of sitting in the fence ever so slightly that says it is what it is. If you want to see your team in the Champions League, you would pay that. You cannot complain about facing Annan and Arbroath and anybody else 10 years ago and suddenly have a complaint about being back in the Champions League and what you're asked to pay.
Mm-hmm. No, that is a fair point now. So just before we move on to the game tomorrow, just another quick message from our sponsors, and that's Forrest Precision Engineering. They're a subcontracted Glasgow-based engineering company, and they've been a big commercial supporter of Rangers for years. And we're absolutely delighted that they're backing our podcast over at forrestprecisioneng.com. And you can also visit the Forrest Precision Executive Lounge at Ibrox. It's a stunning new hospitality area within the main stand. And for more information on how to book this unique and intimate space, you can email the club via hospitality@rangers.co.uk. And just once again, a thank you to the listeners for watching us live. Obviously, just to remind you, you can get us on all your regular podcast providers such as Google Podcast, iTunes and Spotify. So that's out the way. We've obviously got the big game tomorrow. How are you feeling going into it, Stuart? Do you think that this is a game where the Rangers can take the 3 points? Do you think that that's the aim?
I was trying to tot up how many Old Firm games I'd actually been to, and it was actually quite frightening. And that was just professionally. So it was. You'd be surprised. I don't think it's a game that, if you look at the two managers, in effect, they've tried to play it down a bit. It's the first game. It's the first Old Firm game, and there's a long way to go after this. What I will say is that a Rangers victory will put them on top, give them bragging rights. A defeat would see them a sizable distance already behind the reigning champions, and that is one that you would think might even, and I dare say it might even be insurmountable even at this early stage, simply because you do not want to be giving this Celtic team any advantage whatsoever. So there's a lot riding on this game. I think if Rangers play the way they can play and don't get caught up in the atmosphere, which is very, very difficult given some of the guys that will be making their first appearance or debut in this game, I think Rangers have the game plan and the style to actually take 3 points. What I think Giovanni Van Bronckhorst will have already pressed home probably every single day this week, and maybe even twice on a Friday, is that Rangers cannot set out or start the same way they did earlier on in the year, when guys just switched off. They were not at the races, and they were 3-0 down before they even laid a glove in Celtic. And they made changes, and they didn't lose the second half either. But the fact of the matter was the game was long gone, and psychologically, you would hope, or Rangers fans would hope, that the players that were involved that night have not forgot what that feeling is like, because again, a loss on Saturday would mean a 5-point deficit, and that takes a bit of clawing back, especially given your arch rivals and biggest opponents, and for the title have shown no sign of even stuttering or stammering at this point in time.
Mm-hmm. No, I completely agree when you say I don't think we can lose tomorrow. I think it's definitely a must not lose game. I think we can get the 3 points. There's no reason why we can't. I think you've obviously touched on that game in February, and I think lessons have been learned from that. I think if you look at the second half, all right, it was still 3-0 in the first half. The second half was a lot better, and there's been 3 Old Firm games since then. Obviously, the 2-1 defeat at Ibrox, the 2-1 win at Hampden in the semi-final of the Scottish Cup, and then the one each game at Celtic Park. And in my opinion, Rangers were the better team in all 3 of those games. Obviously, Celtic got the result at the game at Ibrox, but Rangers started that game the complete opposite to what they started the game in the February. I think tactically it's going to be very, very interesting, because I think Gio's the type of person, and he's kind of admitted it himself, he likes to get a look at the opposition first. I think that's why we've done so well in 2-legged European ties, more so in the second leg, because in the first leg, he sees what the opponent's all about, he can analyse them, he knows what they're going to do, and then by the time the second leg comes around, that's when you're going for the kill. Slightly different here, because obviously it's a one game. However, what you would say to that is Celtic are probably going to play the same team that played that game on the 2nd of February. I think it probably will be the same team to a T. Certainly none of the new signings are going to start for me tomorrow for Celtic, and they've not changed the way that they've played. So to me, if I was Gio, I would be looking and saying, look at what you've done the last 3 games out of 4 since he's came in. Play that way and try and stifle them. I do think with Celtic that, they're obviously sweeping sides away, but I don't think they've had a proper test this season. They've played Aberdeen and Hearts at home. I mean, we all know what Aberdeen are like against Celtic. Hearts had a couple of half chances, but to me, it seems with a Celtic team, as good as they are domestically, when they come up against a team that's either on the same level as them in terms of quality, and I think Rangers and Celtic now are pretty equal in terms of actual player individual quality. I don't think there's much separating them. I think when they come up against a team that's of a similar quality or higher, most of the time they get beat. And I think that their style of play is suited for when maybe when you're playing your Dundee United, your Kilmarnocks, but maybe isn't suited to playing Rangers all the time. And that's why last year it was 2 wins for Celtic, 2 wins for Rangers and 1 draw. It wasn't, Celtic battered Rangers in 45 minutes. The way that people have been going on about this Celtic team, you would think that that's happened the whole time. And I think the way that Rangers should approach this is exactly how they approached the game in Eindhoven last week. I would play the exact same team. Obviously, Lawrence isn't there, so Scott Wright will probably come in for that. And I think that's what we should do. What would you do in terms of the starting 11? Would you go with that, or would you maybe think of something else?
No, I think Giovanni Van Bronckhorst will know what his preferred lineup is. I think the thing he will impress, as I mentioned a minute ago, is that Rangers cannot afford to switch off or not match Celtic in the pace that Celtic set, or the focus or determination or whatever it might be. They have got to go toe to toe with Celtic, even to stand a chance in the game. And I know what you're saying about Celtic against other opponents, but you don't want to be giving them a chance. They have started the season exceptionally well, and I think the biggest thing for Rangers is that they come out of the game with something and not just their pride intact. I think they have to take something from this game just to keep that points deficit manageable, because you start putting yourself under real pressure then, regardless of how early or late it is in the season. Some players I think are due a big game. I think I think Rangers fans are well aware of the guys that they're looking to turn in a performance, the guys that they're looking to say this guy could be the difference between the two sides. But equally, I think even one of the newcomers, I think QotS is the kind of guy who seems to find a great ease in scoring goals, whether it's semi-spectacular or tap-ins. He seems to be there at the right time in the right place, and that is something that Rangers are benefiting from just now. Again, going back to the point I made, that he is the only totally fit and ready striker that they have.
Mm-hmm. Well, hopefully we can get a couple of goals tomorrow, and you certainly wouldn't be complaining if it was QotS that scored them. Just before we wrap up then, because I know Stuart needs to check out early, just to give you an update into our football prizes, our weekly competition. You can check the Twitter for this week's item at Gersnet Online, which I believe is a signed Stephen Davis shirt, so that's a great prize to get involved in, and I probably will be entering that myself. Because that's a pretty good prize. So Stuart, thanks very much for coming on tonight and giving us your time. Guys, thank you again for watching and tuning in on your Friday night. I know it takes a lot out of people to come and watch us on a Friday, when you could be doing other things, as Stuart said earlier, but thanks very much, and hopefully we can get the result tomorrow. And we will be back on Sunday after the game. It'll be Colin hosting it with Scott and Dougie to review the game tomorrow. And just another reminder, you can visit us at Gersnet Online and at www.gersnet.co.uk. So Stuart, thanks very much for joining us tonight. Thanks very much to the listeners at home, and let's hope we can get the 3 points tomorrow. I've been Craig Gray. Bye for now.